using a new square sheet of watercolor paper. Tape it down to your dining room table or drawing board. And then I want you to draw a large rectangle that goes about halfway down the square. Next, draw 2 smaller squares that make up the height of the rectangle, and then 1 more square on the upper right-hand corner. As we learned yesterday, washes are usually applied to create backgrounds. So far, we have referred to plain and gradated washes, but another kind of wash can be obtained by mixing more than one color on the paper. That is called a variegated wash. This is a wash with a vast, almost infinite number of applications. A variegated wash is one that blends different colors. Variegated washes have as many different uses as the artist's imagination can have. Generally, however, they are resorted to when the background is, say, a multicolored sky at dusk or a stretch of beach with wet sand that reflects reflections of neighboring colors. For variegated washes, it is essential to wet the paper first so that the pigment diffuses more easily and the colors blend together smoothly. The mixture of colors in a variegated wash and the final result are unpredictable and only become apparent after the paint has dried. So in gradations using 2 colors, the change from one to the other must be gradual. To begin this step, use your number 10 rectangular brush, dip it in clean water, and dampen the paper. Do not create a puddle of water, we just want the paper wet. And be careful to keep the water inside the rectangle. If the water goes outside it, then the watercolor will also go outside the rectangle as well. To paint a gradation in 2 colors so that one merges with the other, the lighter color must first be gradated on wet paper, and then the other darker color immediately graded it until both blend in the area where both tones are lightest. So begin by applying the lightest color at the top of your rectangle. And like we did yesterday with the gradated wash on the wet background, you're going to start with 1 solid strip of yellow on the top and gradually press lighter as you're pulling that 1 strip down into the middle of the rectangle. Clean off your brush and then load your brush with a darker color. I'm choosing this darker reddish purple color. Then you're going to apply that on the bottom part of the rectangle. And using the same technique as the gradated wash on wet, you're going to just slightly lift up the pressure of your brush as you come closer to the yellow. Now the little paint that's left on your brush when you come to this middle section, you can gently drag that brush over the paper where the 2 colors meet to get them to blend, or you can clean off your brush like I just did and drag your brush over the 2 colors of where they meet. Do not overwork it. Let the watercolor do its work. It just needs time to blend and fade into one another. So it may not look like a good blend yet, but once it dries a little bit, then it's going to have a softer transition. And once again, clean off the brush and lay it flat to dry when you're done. Another way of obtaining a wash with more than one color is to apply a wash with the first color and paint other colors over it. For this method, it is not necessary to wet the paper first because that first wash already provides sufficient moisture for both colors to smoothly blend together without breaks. When painting a variegated wash in this way, do not forget that it is best to apply the palest tone first because both colors will blend at their boundaries to create new hues. Begin this step by creating a nice light value tonal wash within one of your plastic cups. We are going to create a uniform wash like we did yesterday first, and then place other colors over top. To create a uniform wash, drag your watercolor brush over the square, and then drag it back the other way. Every time you make a stroke, apply more paint onto the brush and keep dragging it back and forth in opposite directions until you have a nice light value even fill. Once that uniform fill is made, then you can begin adding in other colors on top of the first. These other colors can be darker in value and just help show different variegated washes. Therefore, experiment with different brush strokes, applying in different colors, seeing how different strokes create different effects with the watercolor on your paper. Just be careful not to overwork the paper. The more times you rub your watercolor brush over the paper, the weaker the paper can become. We don't want the paper fibers to start lifting off from itself. So once you put a color in, put it in boldly and let it sit there and watch the watercolor do its magic. And once you're done with this step, clean off your brush, gently drag it back and forth on the paper towel and lay it flat to dry. Another technique I want to show you is how to lift paint out of your paper. Lifting out color means removing paint in an attempt to open up areas that let the color of the paper show through. So you're removing the color to show the white of the paper. This is a great method for making corrections. So if you put paint down in an area on your painting that you don't want it to go, you can use this technique to remove it. This is also a great technique to help modify different values within a painted section. So if you need to make lighter values while that paint is still wet, you can apply this technique. So to begin, I want you guys to use a dark blue. We're going to recreate a little sky here. And we're going to create a gradated wash on dry paper. So wet your brush. Start by putting the dark blue at the top third of that square. And then as you drag down, dip your brush into clean water for every stroke. And that's going to help lighten the value of the paint as you move to the bottom part of that square. After painting that square, wash your brush off in water. Then, using your number 4 sable brush, I want you to wet it in clean water, remove the extra dampness from that brush, and then use the brush to retouch the painted area, trying to lift out some of the paint. If you want to remove more color, wash the brush again and repeat the process as often as necessary. With sufficient effort, you can obtain an almost perfect white of the paper. So here you can start to see the white of the paper showing through the paint. Although there is a soft hint of the color that's still around it, we are starting to get this sense of clouds in this blue little sky that we've created. So this is almost a subtractive way of painting. We're not just putting paint on, we are removing paint away to help create different values that we're seeing. And once you're done with this step, clean off the brush, dry it off, and reform the bristles to make a nice point. Our final technique that we're going to be learning today is learning how to create different textures with salt. Salt is used in watercolor painting to achieve textures similar to various objects, such as maybe rocks or stars in the sky, or, a grain-like texture. So today we're going to be creating an almost Milky Way constellation. Create a very dark blue uniform wash and then have some fun turning that into a variegated wash of multiple colors. I'm putting in some dark purples here. I might put in some pinks. I'm also going to combine the lift off technique that we just previously did. So I'm taking my clean brush and I'm lifting off the paint to create an almost Milky Way effect. After you do that, take some salt, pour it into your hand, and then sprinkle the salt over top of the surface. You don't need too much, just a few little sprinkles. If a few grains of salt are sprinkled on top of the wet paint, they absorb it as it dries, creating intriguing shapes that suggest snowflakes or stars. The result will vary depending on the amount of salt you apply and the proximity of the salt grains. You're not going to see immediate results, so wait for the paint to dry and then the magic will happen. Next, we are going to be creating a color wheel with the 3 primary colors. Primary colors are the 3 basic colors that can be mixed to obtain the entire range of colors that are visible to the human eye. The primary colors are red, blue, and yellow. So to begin, use your 2H pencil and draw a triangle. Then using your number 10 round sable brush, I want you to dip it into the crimson red. It's that deepest red you have, and put it on the top of the triangle. Clean off your brush, and then I want you to dip that brush, that wet brush, into the yellow. Paint that yellow into the bottom right-hand corner of the triangle. After you've done that, clean off the brush, and then find your ultramarine blue. That's going to be the basic blue we'll use for these primary colors, and then put that on the lower left-hand triangle as well. Using those primary colors, we are going to mix them together to create the secondary colors of green, orange, and purple. In theory, the resulting secondary colors are created by adding each color in the same proportion. So what I'm doing here is I'm combining an equal proportion of yellow and an equal proportion of red. Now I do think I want a little bit more yellow than red to create this nice orange. Place that orange in between your red and yellow dots. While we have this secondary color mix, we're going to mix our tertiary colors. They are created by combining primary and secondary colors together. Tertiary colors that we're going to be creating are yellow-green, blue-green, blue-purple, red orange, and yellow-orange. To create the red-orange, I'm just taking a little bit of red and I'm adding it to the orange that I've already made, but not too much to make it look red. We want that red or orange look. To create the yellow-orange, I'm just adding a little bit more yellow to the orange that I've mixed to create that tertiary color. After doing this step, take your damp paper towel and clean off the palette from your watercolor set because we don't want it to get too messy, plus we want it clean for the next mixture of colors. To make the green, mix equal proportions of yellow and your ultramarine blue together on the lid cover of your watercolor pan, and then place that in between your blue and yellow circle. To create your yellow-green tertiary color, just take some of that green and add it to the yellow watercolor that you have above, and then paint that in between the green and yellow, and then clean off your brush, take a little bit of ultramarine blue, add it to the green, and then you have your bluish green that you can add between the blue and the green circle. Once you're done, clean off your brush, reform the bristles, and wipe off the lid of your watercolor pan. To create your final secondary color of purple, mix your alizarin crimson and your ultramarine blue in equal proportions, and then place that colored purple circle in between your blue and red circle. To create your tertiary red purple, take a little bit of that purple to a little red watercolor splotch above, and then paint that in between your purple and red circle. Clean off the brush, and then get some blue. Place the blue into the purple that you've already mixed, and then paint that in between your purple and blue circle. Clean off the brush when you're done. Wipe off any moisture on a paper towel, reform the bristles, and lay it flat to dry. And last but not least, clean off your watercolor lid. Before we move on to mixing a couple other colors, let's label our color wheel. So first, label in all capital letters your three primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. Then I want you to label your secondary colors in capital letters, orange, green, and purple. And then in lowercase letters, label your tertiary colors. When you label your tertiary colors, always place the primary color first. So it should be red-orange, yellow-orange, yellow-green, blue-green, blue-purple, and red-purple. Next, we're going to learn how to take one of these colors that we mixed and create different values of those colors near the squares on the upper right-hand side of our paper. To create a scale or range of values, you normally would think of using white. However, white is not what you would use in watercolor. To create lighter values, you're actually going to be using more water. To do this step, paint any shape you want with any color from your watercolor palette. Just create a nice little splotch of color on your watercolor lid. To create lighter values, take some clean water and add that water to that color on your watercolor lid. Every time you add water, you're going to be lightening the value of that color because the pigment is going to be diluted amongst this puddle of water that you're creating. And you can see here, I've created a full range of values going from dark to light and light to dark. Pretty soon, you're going to have a color that barely shows up on the paper. Always add the same amount of water to the paint though, so that the gradation is even and continuous. And please clean off your brush and the watercolor lid before doing this next step. For this next step, we're going to be learning how to mix the neutral colors like browns and grays with our complementary colors. Complementary colors are colors that are opposite one another on the color wheel. So for this exercise, we're going to be mixing equal proportions of red and green, purple and yellow, and blue and orange. We are also going to be creating a brown by mixing the primary colors together. So know that there are many ways to achieve a variety of colors. Just because you have certain browns in your palette does not mean that those will be the browns that match the browns you may be seeing in your reference photo. So these extra little color mixing techniques help us create more accurate looking colors. After you've labeled those 4 sections, you can begin mixing those colors together. So wet your brush, get a clean cup of water, and mix in equal proportion your dark crimson red and your olive green. You should achieve a nice muddy brown for this color combination. Next, mix your purple and yellow, then your blue and orange. The blue and orange is going to have a kind of greenish neutral color to it. For your last one of mixing the primary colors together, still use the same primary colors that we did on our color wheel, so the crimson red, the yellow, and the ultramarine blue, and mix those in equal proportion. You'll notice you'll get a really nice rich brown with that one. One thing that I learned that I thought was really cool, that if you want to mix really good skin tones, you mix the primary colors together in different proportions to get the different skin tone pigments that we see on different people of different ethnicities. So that's a fun fact for you, that if you want to create really good skin tones, don't go to your browns, go to your primary colors and use those to mix skin tones together. After you've completed these techniques, I would like you to label each one of what you've done so you can refer back to this whenever you're creating your painting. And then take a picture of this assignment and submit it into Schoology so you can receive full points.